Hello, my friends of Beautiful Markup. About 3 years ago, I started recording videos for HTMHell, but I stopped after only 4 videos, which is really unfortunate because I actually enjoyed recording these videos and I also believed that the content was useful. That's why I've decided to give it another try, and this time I'm changing the format a little bit. I will focus on a specific topic in each video, which should make the videos a bit shorter, which will make it easier for me to create them. In this first video, I want to talk about the popover attribute, which is one of the most recent additions to the language and one that I find super interesting. A popover is a floating UI element with supplementary or context-related content. This can be, just simple text that you show and hide, but it can also be as complex as a content picker, so something like an emoji picker or a date picker. It can be a suggestion for a form element like autocomplete, something you would find in a combo box, for example. An action menu, a sub-navigation, teaching UI, or any kind of non-modal dialogue. Usually that's a group of content. It can also be a dialogue that prompts users to perform a certain action. It can be a tooltip or a menu or a list box. A popover is usually aligned very close to the button that triggers it. That's not a strict rule, it's just something that's common, that is closely aligned to the button. And you can show and hide a popover by clicking a button or by pressing enter. And if the popover is visible and you click again or press enter again, it will hide it. And usually you also have light dismiss options like pressing escape or clicking outside of the popover. That's what a popover is usually. Now let's see how we can implement them in HTML. I've prepared a simple example. So we have a button here that says HTML, and then we have a div with a definition of HTML I copied from Wikipedia. In order to turn this simple div into a popover, we have to add the popover attribute. And now you can see how the div disappears. And this is because by default, the popover attribute comes with display none. Now we want to click on the button and show and hide this popover. And in order to do that, we need to create a connection between the button and the popover. First, we provide a unique identifier for the popover by using the ID attribute. And I will call this popover HTML. You can pick any name you want. And then we have to reference the popover in the button, and we can do that by using the popover target attributes. And now we have created a connection between the button and the popover. Very similar to how you would do it if you wanted to associate a label with an input field. And when I click the button, you can see how a popover appears, and if I click again, it disappears. By default, it's aligned at the center of the viewport. But like I said, that's not what you usually want. You want it to be aligned closely to the button. Now, you could use the CSS anchor positioning specification here, or the module, in order to style the popover, but you don't have to, because popovers come with an implicit anchor. So you don't have to explicitly define anchors, which is really convenient. The thing is, first of all, you have to know that. I didn't know it until 2 days ago. My friend Keith Circle told me about it, which is cool. Now I know that. And the second thing is, it's not very obvious judging from the default styling, because by default it almost looks like a modal dialogue. So now, if you want to use the implicit positioning, you have to do two things. So first, you select the popover, and you remove the margin, and then you have to use some kind of property that will allow you to position the anchor. I'm using the position area property here, and I'm aligning it at the bottom end of the button, and I'm telling it to span to the right. And now you can see how the popover is not centered anymore. It's now aligned with the button, which is really, really cool. Awesome. Now, let's see what happens if we have two popovers and how they relate to each other and how they interact with each other. I've added another button, a CSS button with the definition of CSS, and now you can see we have two buttons. If I click on one of the buttons and I click again, it disappears. If I click again on HTML and I click on CSS, you can see how it shows the CSS popover and it automatically closes the HTML popover. That's good to know, I guess. Another thing that's good to know is that if you press escape, it also closes the popover, or if you click outside. So this is the default behavior that we get with the popover attribute. So that's the auto behavior. You can change that. So if you say, you know what, I want to use popover, but I want it to behave differently, I want to manage it manually maybe, then you can do that by changing the value of the popover attribute to manual. And I'm doing that for both. And now you can see I can still open it, I can still close it, but if I press escape, nothing happens. And if I click outside, also nothing happens. And the HTML pop-up is now open. If I click on the CSS pop-up, you can see, popover, you can see how both are now open. And that's cool because now the browser doesn't do anything and you can do it yourself, because there are methods in JavaScript that you can use in order to control the popover manually. So by default, we have the auto value, we have the manual value, and then there is another value, which is hint. And in order to show you how hint works, I have to use a more complex example. Because hint popovers don't automatically close auto popovers, but they close other hint popovers, which can be really useful. Here's an example that I copied from MDN. Here you can see still our two buttons. We have definitions for HTML and CSS, but on top of that, we also have a tooltip. So if you hover over one of the buttons, it will show a tooltip. Or if you use the keyboard and you focus it, it will also show it. If you tap to the next one, it will hide the previous one and show the one that you focused. And same goes for hover. And if you click the button, you still get the definition from our earlier example. And you can see how somehow that doesn't feel right. So you can see every time I open a popover and I move the mouse to another button, the tooltip shows and the popover disappears. And that's something that, I don't know, it makes the interface a bit too busy. What you probably want is, you always want to show the tooltips on hover and focus, but showing the tooltips shouldn't hide the default popovers. So if you want to do that, you have to define the hint value for the tooltip popovers, which I'm doing now. And then in your JavaScript, you manage what happens on mouse over and focus and so on. So you can see that I'm going over all tooltips and I'm adding event listeners. On mouse over, I'm using the show popover methods to show it. On mouse out, I'm hiding it. I'm doing the same for focus and blur. And now you can see I'm clicking the CSS button, it shows the popover. I'm moving the mouse over to the HTML button and it shows the tooltip, but it doesn't hide the popover anymore, the auto popover. And this is really really useful if you have a case where you have a combination of different popovers on one element. That's really cool. If you look closely at the show popover method I'm using here, you can see that I'm providing options. I'm using the source property here, and I'm setting it to the trigger button. And this is really important because this creates a connection between the popover and the invoker. So by default, if you're using the popover target attribute, you are creating this connection. I already told you about it. So by using the popover target attributes and providing an ID, you are connecting the button to the popover. But if you're not using HTML, if you're using JavaScript only and you use the show popover attribute method, all you're doing is, just showing the popover or hiding it, but there's no connection between the button that triggers it. And by providing the source property here, you can create this connection between the button and the popover programmatically. Why is this important? I will show you. If I remove this, and we now hover over the button, you can see how the tooltip is not aligned anymore with the button. It's now relative to the viewport. And that's because there is no connection between the button and the popover. So we lose the implicit anchor here. And there's another reason which affects accessibility, but we'll talk about the accessibility of popovers in a dedicated video because I really want to dive deep into the topic of accessibility with popovers. All right. So if you have a complex example where you have a combination of different popovers that do different things and behave differently, then the hint option can be really useful. We have one more attribute that allows us to control popovers, and that's the popover action property. So by default, if you click on a button, it will open and close it. So it toggles the visibility of the popover, but you may want a button that only shows your popovers or hides them. And if you want that, you just provide the popover target action attribute and set it to show or hide. So you can see that show only shows it. If I click, nothing happens. If I want to hide it, I can press the hide button or the toggle button. Yeah, so you have three actions. By default, it's toggle, and you can also use show or hide. And that's it. That's at least that's enough for the introduction to the popover attributes. There are more things that I can talk about. Like I said, the accessibility. There's a lot of interesting things built into popovers that come by default implicitly by setting the attributes, which I will talk about in the next video. And also there are some things to consider when styling popovers, which I will talk about as well in another video. And that's it for this first video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you are now as excited as I am about popovers. If you liked this video, then please also like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, leave a comment. And also if you have suggestions for future topics that you want me to explain or talk about, then please leave a comment. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.